Podcast.
Welcome back to the Upper Tier Podcast, the football podcast that we bring you each and every week on the Dynamo Podcast Network. Head over to YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button to receive all the latest content as it becomes available. And joining me today again, Alex Byrne, Chelsea fan, and this is your Liverpool-Chelsea match reaction. Alex, good to have you on.
Thank you. It's good to be on. It makes a stark contrast from my very first appearance after we sacked Frank, and I was sitting there and I was I don't know what's going on. We're this and we're that, but what a difference about a month makes. I'm sitting here now going, Jesus, like I can't believe how Tuchel has us playing.
Yeah, it's incredible to see the change in Chelsea, isn't it? Like, I mean, it's just, we were talking beforehand, I mean, the resilience of them at the back now and grinding out those 1-0s that I think under Lampard potentially would have been draws or even losses has made a huge difference. And still at a time, I mean, we still haven't seen Chelsea at their best yet because, I mean, they're still trying to figure out what their best formation is. They're trying to figure out their best players. I mean, we had a preview there the other night, and I stressed in the preview, I said, if Fabinho was back, I said he has to play in midfield and he has to play as defenders. I said, if he plays, I called it that he would play Chilwell, and I also thought that he would play Reece James because I said he didn't need any defensive manoeuvring there in terms of height of the team, which where he would usually use Alonso and use Hudson-Odoi. And I also stressed that to negate Robinson and Trent Alexander-Arnold, that that Reece James and what was the other lad on the other side? Sorry, Reece James and not Hudson-Odoi. That Reece James would negate that because he wouldn't avoid his defensive duties, whereas the likes of Hudson-Odoi, you know,
and Alonso gets kind of caught up.
And Alonso, they kind of get caught up that end of the pitch, whereas Reece would do his defensive duty, you know. And I called that the other night. And Chidwell, Ben Chidwell is the one I'm trying to think of. That they will both be better, more defensively sound if they're trying to negate that, but also will give you that driving force going forward. I'd agree with that. Yeah, and I also made the point as well that if Fabinho didn't play in the middle of the park, that our midfield is so porous that the likes of Jorginho and Kovacic and all would just overrun us in midfield, really, and that we wouldn't have an answer for it. And that's kind of how the game played out, even though it was a 1-0, and like, you know, the 1-0 didn't really tell the story of the game. We were so passive, no aggression, no desire, lethargic, disjointed, and I knew from minute one it was going to be a chore. So what was your feeling?
Well, when I was watching the game, like I said to you before the show as well, in terms of being more resilient at the back, I think that Chelsea are a back three team. I just think the back three suits certain teams and it doesn't suit other teams. I think in terms of ourselves, when we played three at the back, we're a different team. When we were getting good results under Frank last season, it was a case of when we were playing the back three, we were a lot better against the top teams. And I remember saying to you when I was on talking about Frank getting sacked that I don't understand how we had this group of players playing such negative, such bad football. Because if you look at them last night, there's players that can knock the ball around very well there. But just think as well that when I saw your formation, I was thinking, okay, they're playing with a high line. Now, I've come on and I've said, I love Giroud. I think he's an absolutely brilliant striker. But I said, I wouldn't start him tonight. I was saying, I'd start Werner because of that high line. And as soon as I saw a team of Werner starting up front, I was like, okay, I really fancy this because I think he will get in behind that. I watched the game with my brother last night, who's a very kind of casual football fan. He'll watch it the odd time if I'm watching it. But the first thing he said was, why are they playing with such a high line? He was saying, because he watches Chelsea the odd time with me, and he says, I know Werner's fast. He says, so why are they playing with such a high line? And literally the second he said that is when we got the ball over the top for the disallowed goal, the offside. That was over the top and around Alisson. And yeah, I was saying to me, I don't understand. Like, surely, from my point of view as a Chelsea fan, I could see us exploiting it, but surely Klopp as a manager has to see, look, this doesn't work when we have a pacey striker like Werner playing such a high line, because he's getting in every time. He could have had a hat-trick last night.
Yeah, I think the thinking behind that, and I'm not too sure, but I think the thinking behind it was that there's still a little bit of disjointment between Werner and the players playing him through. And he tends to get caught offside a lot more than often. And I think he was trying to negate that by saying, well, if we play a high line, he's going to break that line more often than not. And let's take the risk of him getting through. Yeah, I mean, the goal, I just can't understand VAR. I don't understand measuring a guy's armpit or a guy's arm.
Yeah.
Surely the God, it has to be by the feet. I mean, that's the only thing that's really in play. You know what I mean? So it makes no sense to me at all.
It doesn't. And I personally myself, I was looking at the decision and I was shouting at my television. What annoyed me so much, they were saying, well, you know, the arm was offside, but I'm screaming at the television going, he can't score with his arm. I'm like, you can't score with the body part. So what if it's also, if you look, his feet, I think, are even, you know, behind Robertson, who's playing him on side. Robertson's here. I think Verner's actually starting to run from it behind Robertson from our point of view. And he's having to lean his arm. And I thought it was an absurd decision. And to be fair, I've spoken to a lot of Liverpool fans who were also saying, yeah, look, that's a crazy decision.
I thought it was an absurd decision, but when you scored at the time, I did call it to the lads straight away. I said, I bet you that's going to be chopped off or offside. And I know it was only minuscule, but I just had a feeling. It's the way the referees and the VAR's decisions are going at the moment. There's nearly a pettiness to it, isn't it, really? It's like the refs are getting a hard time, so they're finding ways to just, like, you know, upset the apple cart, if you like. You know what I mean? It's weird.
I was wondering then in the second half, when there was the handball decision that went against Liverpool, like when Kante had his hand up here, I almost thought to myself, are they not giving that to try and balance it out? That doesn't make sense to me. I personally thought it was a penalty.
I thought that would have been harsh. I thought he was very close. I would say the arm was in an unnatural position, but you know, if he had given that penalty, I thought it would have been one, it would be very soft. Two, obviously as a Liverpool fan, I would have welcomed it. But three, I would have thought that if we had got that penalty and we had got a draw, it would have done a disservice to Tuchel and Chelsea in terms of the display that they put on. What was your making on Klopp and the substitutions? I found it very strange.
It was a strange one to me. I understand bringing on Jota because before he got injured, he was playing very well. He was scoring lots of goals. So I understand bringing him on. What I didn't understand was bringing him on for Salah, though. I think even Jamie Carragher said, you know, you're 1-0 down. Why would you bring off the Premier League top goal scorer when you're 1-0 down? Like, to me, that didn't make a lot of sense. And kind of when you saw Firmino in the game, I thought Firmino had a very poor night. He barely even got on the ball. At one point, I was sitting thinking, like, is he playing? So I thought that would have been a change, maybe Jota for Firmino. Then in terms of Oxlade-Chamberlain, he's a good player, but he took off Curtis Jones, who I personally thought was having a very good game. When he was on the ball, there was one moment in the first half where he picked the ball up, and I think there were 4 Chelsea players around him, and he just danced around them all. And I said, what a player. So when I saw him coming off, I was like, fair enough. And then when he brought James Milner on, I was like, okay, I like James Milner a lot, but surely if you're 1-0 down, bring on another attacker, you know, just go for it.
Yeah, that was my biggest concern. I mean, you know, he turned around afterwards and said he didn't want to risk Salah. And I was thinking, what did you not want to risk? Risk him scoring and equalising maybe or something like that? Because that made no sense at all. I mean, bringing on Jota, what I would have done is I would have brought him on for Bobby Firmino, who's having a terrible season, really, when you think about it. Yeah. And what I would have done is I would have switched Salah into the middle. I would have switched Mane over to Salah's side, and I would have put Jota in where Mane was. And that's the trio I would have played up front. There's no way I would have been bringing off Mo Salah because he is one of those guys at any moment who can pop up and put a goal in, you know. Whereas Mane has been struggling and Bobby's been struggling even more, you know. The other switch there was like Curtis coming off for Ox. I didn't get that at all. I mean, Curtis Jones probably been our best midfielder all season, to be honest. In terms of flair and a bit of creativity and having a bit of guile and a bit of go about him, he reminds me a little bit of Mason Mount, really. He has that bit of, that bit of energy that he brings to the pitch. And look, just when I say Oxlade-Chamberlain coming on, no disrespect to the guy at all, but you know, I think he's well beyond that level at this stage. You know what I mean? I don't think he's at that level anymore. He's a bit part player who comes on, who rarely influences a game. I mean, did he even get a touch last night when he came on? I heard him; he wasn't even mentioned. I don't think.
He didn't do much. And to be honest with you, I think Curtis Jones, like Mason Mount, the reason he's so kind of live and energetic is, you know, he's the kind of boy. He's a Liverpool boy. He's playing for the shirt. He's not there because of money. He's not there because of this. He wants to play for Liverpool. And the same as Mount. Like me personally, last night, I thought Mason Mount was the best player on the pitch last night. I thought he had an outstanding game in midfield.
Yeah, it was gas because I was sitting watching it with a few boys, and one of the lads said to me, he goes, and it was weird. He said, "I don't get the hype about Mason Mount." This is what he said, right? And this was literally 40 seconds before Mount went up the pitch, cut in from the left, and put the ball into the bottom corner. And I said, now you get him. I said, that's what he's capable of doing at a moment's notice. And I said, he's an absolute baller. I said, you're crazy to not rate him.
Yeah.
And he scored the goal, but it was a fantastic goal. And like, I'm sort of looking at it as a Liverpool fan, and I'm going, no, naturally, I don't want Chelsea to score, but if I want Chelsea to score, I kind of want it to be Mason Mount.
Yeah. And it's kind of, I know there was the old kind of adage of, Lampard was playing him week in, week out because he was his favourite. But, like, in my opinion, similar to Jones, he's been our best player this season. Despite the money we spent, he is without a doubt Chelsea's best player. And I thought the goal was wonderful last night. And again, cliche, it actually reminded me of a Frank Lampard goal, the cutting in and drilling into the bottom corner.
Yeah, we said it the other night on the preview. We said that when you look at Curtis Jones and you look at Mason Mount, we could be looking at the second coming of Lampard and Gerrard. In theory, you know what I mean? Because I think Curtis is he 20 or something like that, and I think Mason's 23 or something like that. So you can imagine when those boys are 23 and 26, how good they'd be. You know what I mean? So it was
exactly.
It was an interesting to look at it in that way. You know what I mean? But I just thought, and then I seen Milner coming on, and I was going, we always bring Milner on just to shore things up. You know what I mean? And then I was thinking, okay, maybe he's brought Milner on because maybe he's going to try chase a penalty or something like that because Milner's always good for a penalty, you know what I mean? But then I was thinking, you've taken Salah off and he's the only one who really dribbles in the box because for some reason Mane doesn't want to go down. He's as honest as the day is young, you know? And he just, which we commend, but we don't commend, you know? But I just thought overall, I thought Chelsea wanted it more. We were passive again at home. No guile in us, no fire. Like I couldn't understand it as well, not bringing on Naby Keita for Thiago, you know what I mean? To put that bit of creativity in the middle, who'll go by players, so try and bypass your midfield. And he'll also play that killer pass into the box that maybe Mane or Salah or Jota could run onto. And I couldn't understand. It was like we had decided, okay, we're 1-0 down, we're just going to accept this, so we'll bring James Milner on. It was a real surrender, really, you know what I mean? And it was like the last 15 minutes of the game was a procession really for Chelsea. I mean, we didn't really put you under any real pressure, you know what I mean? But I found and it really bugs me as well, this whole thing of, this one-dimensional balls out to Robinson, balls out to Trent, swinging balls into the box, just aimless, hopeful balls with no intent, no whip, no desire, barely passing by the first man. And like, who are we putting them into? Most of our forward line are somewhere between 5'9" and 5'11". And you're going in against the likes of Christensen, you're going in against the likes of Rudiger, big lads in there. They'll just soak those balls up all day long. And unless you have an absolute inch perfect cross, you're not going to get at now of them. So I said on the preview the other night, I said our technique and our goal has to be creativity in the middle, put the ball up the middle, try and split the defence, try and split the midfield and take it out of the game. If we're going to keep on going out to the wings, we're wasting our time, you know what I mean? It was so difficult because you Trent out there on that side as well, and he was trying to deal with the threat of Werner, he was trying to deal with the threat of Chilwell on that side, I think it is, and he just, you know what I mean? It was just too much for him. He just got overpowered. And even when he did get forward, again, just aimlessly knocking balls into the box, ball goes into the box. And even when the ball goes into the box and we pick it up, we're spraying it back out into midfield, we're moving it around. No one wants to have a shot. Like our first shot on target was a header back to the keeper, basically, Gini Ronaldo. And you're just looking at it and you're going, we spent nearly 50, 60 minutes before we had a shot on target. And you're looking going, so how are you going to win games if that's your goal? You know what I mean? With that front three, And I just think, I'm beginning to think now that there's underlining issues there at the club, that there's something going on, that things are just not right. Those players in that short space period of time can't have become so bad, so lethargic, so, I don't know, unmotivated or demotivated or whatever, It's just...
It's a strange one. Like, I'd almost argue that, like, ever since they had the break last season and then had the restart back, for some reason, Liverpool just didn't seem to have the same kind of oomph about, the same kind of, I suppose, aggressiveness. Like, even when this season started, I remember the opening game of the season when you played Leeds and you beat them 4-3. I watched it with my mate who's a Liverpool fan, and we sat there and said, played well, a few goals, but, like, I was like, it was almost a sense of they weren't bothered. They were kind of like, oh, yeah, we're good, we're this, we're that. But I don't know whether it's a case that they've lost the hunger or if it's a case of they're just like, we're a great team. We don't have to try. I'm not sure what it is myself. I don't know. But I know that Klopp's had a rough time recently with his mother dying and not being allowed back to Germany. And also Allison now, what happened with his dad as well. So, I mean, that's got to have an effect on the team as well.
It does. But, you know, I accept that. But you have the 11 players going out there onto the pitch. And, like, basically the kids in the team, like the likes of Nat Phillips, the likes of Curtis Jones, they're the lads who are showing up and playing. You know what I mean? Robbo looks this season more like he wants to get into a row than he does play football. I don't know what's wrong with him. And you know, there has been talk of, you know, training ground bust-ups that he had to go off Allison and stuff like that. Now, I don't know how true that is. It was paper talk, you know. But he's coming out as well when he's doing interviews and he says it's not good enough. These players, it's just not good enough. It's not Liverpool and it's not acceptable. So he's having to go off his own players as well. And he's talking in his interviews as well, as, you know, nearly as if he's club captain, trying to inspire these guys to do better. But I don't see any excuse for, you know, there's a lack of energy, a lack of desire. I mean, every time this season we've had a door open for us to give us an opportunity, we've slammed the door shut ourselves. You know what I mean? We had an opportunity against Everton. Okay, you can accept City beating you. We had an opportunity against Everton, slammed shut. We had an opportunity against yourselves last night, slammed shut. And, you know, okay, you are a very good Chelsea side. There's no doubt about that. And, you know, get beaten by Chelsea by 1-0. It's not the end of the world. But it is the end of the world when you've lost 5 on the bounce at home. And only 3 of those games is against top opposition. And you're virtually making no opportunities. 1 shot on target, which was ahead of Gini Ronaldo. Who incidentally, I mean, like, it's gas to even think about Gini playing there. I mean, he's normally 100% pro. But I mean, surely the God people know his mind is elsewhere at the moment. He's touting himself out to Barcelona versus other players or other teams and stuff like that. And it's just like, you know, in other times he'd probably be on the bench. You know what I mean? If he's not signing a new contract, that would be the end of it and go, right, fine, you're going in June, done. You know what I mean? But we're looking to these players at the moment who potentially their minds are elsewhere. Like, you can even see it, like, I'm even looking at it with Mane and Salah, and you're looking and you're going, you know, if Real Madrid and Barcelona weren't in such trouble financially and that cloud that's hanging over them and stuff like that at the moment, I think these boys would be touting themselves out to these teams. You know what I mean? And I just, it's a weird one at the moment. I just don't see that heart and desire and hunger. Now, you look at Salah last night when he was taken off, he was proper pissed. You know what I mean? So that kind of would lead you to believe that that's a good sign. I'm sure he has his mind on the golden boot and stuff like that, being lead, because he's leading the goal scoring at the moment. But just a lack of energy, you know, giving the ball away so handy last night, you know what I mean? Breaking down in the passes, you know, picking up the ball in defence and playing it out to midfield and not completing passes. Jorginho basically ran the show last night. Absolutely ran the show last night.
Like Jorginho, that's, I suppose, the Jorginho that they wanted to play for Sarri's system, you know, get the ball control and move it around, do everything like that. But I think, again, the back three makes it easier for him to do that, because when you've got that, you know, back three, you've got Kante and Jorginho, and if you do happen to get past them, you've got 3 centre-backs to deal with then as well. And he was one last night as well, Kante. He was everywhere, absolutely everywhere. As soon as Liverpool were there with the ball, and just, he didn't stop running for the whole game. And I think that's what surprised me the most. Like, apart from Jones, I was thinking we're really winning this midfield battle. So when he came off and I saw Oxlade-Chamberlain come on, we really seemed to control the midfield even more. It seemed to be, you know, there wasn't any kind of, I suppose, progressive kind of work through the middle where you were getting in. It was all out to the wings. It was kind of like watching us play before Tuchel come in. We couldn't penetrate the middle, so we were side to side and crossing it in. But as you pointed out, when you're crossing it in against, you know, the likes of Christensen and Rudiger, you're not going to get much joy when your attackers are 5'9".
Yeah, well, I suppose the difficulty as well is, and I noticed it last night, like Thiago was playing in a much deeper role, and he was nearly playing like that protection sweeper role. And I was there going, but he's the man who's supposed to string the passes together. He's the guy who's supposed to be supplying the front three. Now, Jones was trying to do that, but every time Jones got the ball, Chelsea had obviously done their homework on him because there was 3 players around him. Now, I know he wangled out of a few tackles a few times and looked really good. But I mean, you're only going to get away with that so many times. Eventually, it's going to break down. Chelsea get the upper hand. But like, our midfield just looks non-existent. Gini, I don't know. Curtis, he's trying his best, but he's kind of on his own. And Thiago sitting back in that deep role. I don't know what the thinking of that was. I just can't understand why, we have Reece Williams there on the bench. Put him in with Kabak. Like, if we're going to lose, we're going to lose. Put him in at the back and have Fabinho sitting in that holding role. And then if you want, push Thiago on or Curtis, push them on and have some sort of creativity there. I mean, we're talking about the three guys up front, but like Bobby Firmino's having to drop so deep now to try and pick up the ball and create something. He's nearly a midfielder. So in actual fact, we're nearly playing a 4-4-2 in reality. And it's so frustrating to see it, like bringing on James Milner instead of Naby Keita when you're chasing the game. It beggars belief. It makes no sense at all.
Yeah, and it seems that like Klopp reminds me of Sarri in a sense. And I remember when we had Maurizio Sarri as Chelsea manager for that one season, we'd be playing games, the game plan wouldn't be working, like teams would be exploiting us. And just for whatever reason, similar to what Klopp's doing, he won't change the game plan. It looks like when we kept playing the same way, I was like, okay, they're going to have to do something like change formation, change the setup, change something like that. But he seemed to just be doing like for like players, like, okay, you go in and do the same job. So I was kind of looking, going, and he didn't try, I suppose, do anything to nullify us when we were clearly getting him behind a lot. So it was a bit strange to me because, there wasn't any kind of reactance to what we were doing. Like Tuchel, I've seen in games, something isn't going right. He's very proactive. You saw him taking off Hudson-Odoi in that game against Southampton. So it was strange to see a manager just, I suppose, basically, no, we're doing it this way or we're not doing it at all type of thing.
I said it to some of the lads last night on some of the Liverpool forums out there, and I hate to say this because, I love and idolise Jurgen Klopp for what he did and everything else. But he seems to, it's like he has sort of seemed to have checked out this season. It's like, he did an interview there a few weeks ago, and I know obviously he was going through a tough time with the mother passing away and not being able to go to the funeral and all that. But the interview he gave when he said he had surrendered the league, remember, and he was nearly in tears, he couldn't believe it. He was so disappointed. And then even last night, like doing the interview and saying, it's a massive blow in our pursuit of a top four. You know what I mean? Which again spreads that negativity and gives those players those reasons and excuses that, like, VAR, injuries, no fans, all teams are going through it. We've had injuries. Every team has had injuries, you know what I mean? Not to the extent that we've had. But it's his whole demeanour as well. He's on the sideline there and he looks fed up. He looks like, he looks at the moment like managing Liverpool is the last thing he wants to do. It looks like he's just, there's no smile there anymore. He's not trying anything, you know what I mean? Yes, well, if you think about it, we've got Fulham at the weekend. If we beat Fulham at the weekend, we're only a point off top four, pending all your own results. I mean, you guys have Everton on Monday night. That's going to be a tough game. United have City at the weekend, the Manchester derby. So here we have a situation again, is if we could go out and we could beat Fulham, we get 3 points back. Potentially, let's suppose if Everton bet you on Monday night, we could be only a point off top four. And yet it's like, as if it's this massive uphill, like we're 12 points off it or something like that. It's like we're just giving it away, like we don't want it anymore. And my biggest fear if we don't get top four, we're not going to be able to attract in the players that we want to attract in. And also, if we get stuck in that Thursday night football, heaven forbid, like I'd rather come 7 or 8 than come 5th.
Yeah.
I really don't want it. I'd rather have a season out of Europe than to be in that Europa League. Because that Thursday, Monday job, it's just a slog. You're just always playing catch up all the time. And I just don't.
I think though as well, like if you look at that top 4 like from United in second down to Liverpool in 8, there's only about 8 or 9 points in the difference. So I'm kind of looking at that going, 8 or 9 points when the teams are so inconsistent with 11 games left. Isn't that big of a swing? Like I think everyone there is in the mixture, but I see with Klopp, like we did touch on like with his mom and what's happened there, that would obviously affect his demeanour. But even before that though, because I remember last season and even the season before, Klopp was great, but if he lost, he was a bit snappy with the reporters and he was a bit spiky and he was kind of, very aggressive. But it seems to be a case of he's doing it this season, even when he wins. Like there was the game where he just beat Arsenal at Anfield and Roy Keane said, he played well, but 1 or 2 sloppy moments. And Jurgen Klopp just attacked him after the game. And he was like, Jurgen, I said you played well. And then there was the other one on BT when you drew with Brighton. And I don't know who it was. I think it was Milner or something went down with a hamstring injury. And Klopp started going crazy at the reporter, going, "Oh, this is your fault for the fixtures." And he was saying, I don't pick the fixtures. I don't understand why you're going mad at me. So his whole demeanour seems to have changed. He was almost like, a nice guy. I used to compare him to Ned Flanders. I was like, do you think the Ned Flanders of football? Nice guy, but he's just really good at what he does. But I don't know. This season, he just seems to be giving out and moaning and complaining about everything and anything.
It's like that Shawn Michaels effect, isn't it? He's lost his smile. You know what I mean? Like, there's no smile there anymore. It doesn't seem to be a very happy place, and it's just, it just seems now trying to figure out and step back and have a look at what's going on is an absolute slog. You know what I mean? And in
It
some
is.
respects, you look
Yeah.
at Tuchel. Like, Tuchel's kind of in a way going through a similar situation where he's trying to figure out his team. He's trying to figure out his players. So he's trying to push through things and stuff like that as well. But he's finding a way to grind out results. He's finding a way to,
Yes.
keep clean sheets. And, he's still trying to figure out what that front 3 or 4 is going to look like at that midfield and stuff like that. But, he's a breath of fresh air. He kind of reminds me of Klopp when Klopp kind of came in with the smile. And
Yeah,
then,
exactly.
there's a bit of anger there and a bit of tension, and he's no problem having to go. I've seen him having to go off Alonso a couple of times during that game when Alonso lost the ball. And like, you're there going, that's the kind of manager wants who's willing to get stuck in. But like,
yes,
we ran onto the pitch last night and it was like he had won the FA Cup or something. Like, you know what I mean? This was a big deal there. Whereas we were quite happy to roll over.
Yeah, and that was the thing, like with Frank, as much now as, again, I love Frank Lampard, he was too passive on the sideline. You look over and you just see Frank like this, stand there with the answer for the look and see. I love that. You see, like, the players giving the ball away and Tuchel's almost like, what are you doing? Why have you done that? What think? Just don't give the ball. And I love that. It's like he's watching as a fan and he's thinking what we're thinking, shouting at the players. And that has to have a knock-on effect, because I remember Conte was the same. Conte was very animated on the sideline and he'd be almost kicking every ball with him. And I think that really radiates onto the pitch, because, like, if he's that into it, I better be playing well for him. And yeah, like, he's really turned it around, because we were having the same problem that you were just before Lampard got sacked. We looked lethargic, we weren't interested. Doors were opening for opportunities to get into the top 4, got top of the league, we just weren't taking them. And then all of a sudden this guy's come in, and then it's like, I think it's 10 games he's had in charge. It's 8 wins and 2 draws, only 1 goal conceded from an opposition player. So, like, it's night and day. The turnaround is absolutely incredible. I think a lot of that is to do with mentality as well, because again, I was going to just touch on, even with Klopp, his last season at Dortmund was a very bad season too. I think midway through last season he was at Dortmund, I think they were a point off the relegation zone. So it's a strange move with Klopp. Like, he seems to get everything he can out of his players. He seems to put so much into them emotionally, and they really push themselves. But I don't know if it's burnout or what, because it's a similar situation to what happened at Dortmund.
Yeah, it was also, you look at it and you kind of think, after the success of last season, you look at it and you think, was he disappointed in the transfer window in the summer, in terms of, okay, we brought in Jota, we brought in Thiago, but like, our net spend over the last 2 or 3 years is minuscule, really, in terms of challenging at the higher end. You know what I mean? And I wonder, was he disappointed? Did he want more in and he didn't get what he wanted? And then I know we hit the ground running and we were pretty good all the way up to nearly Christmas. You know what I mean? And then I wonder, with all the injuries and stuff like that, and the club brought in Ben Davis and the club brought in Ozan Kabak, I wonder, were they his picks, or did the club just go out and find 2 centre-backs to throw at him that was cost-effective during this COVID problem? And I wonder, did he look at them and go, I'm after losing Virgil van Dijk, and I'm after losing Joe Gomez, and I'm after losing Fabinho and Joe Matip and all this, and you're giving me Ozan Kabak and you're giving me Ben Davis. Now, no disrespect to those guys, they could be really good footballers, but I wonder, was it that sort of, that German kind of petulant way with him, that it was like, this is what I told you I wanted, and this is what you're giving me after all the success I brought you? And I just wonder, is there a bit of this going on at the moment with the owners?
I'd understand that. I'd understand that for Klopp, because when you were missing so many centre halves, he was saying, I need to go out and I need to replace these 2 with the same type of quality. So, the first name to spring to mind, you're thinking, Koulibaly off Napoli, you're thinking Upamecano off Leipzig.
Yeah.
So to go for them, and like, I want a challenge for the title, I want a challenge for the Champions League. When you get, and again, I respect, but when you get a centre back from Preston and a centre back from a team that's bottom of the Bundesliga, it doesn't exactly scream, title challengers when you make those signings.
Yeah, and it does, like, and I mean, it doesn't look as if it was. They don't look on the face of it as if they were Jurgen Klopp signings. They look like with a little bit of money there, and we need to find someone to fit the budget because of COVID. And I can understand as well from the club's point of view that, like, January is a horrible time to buy players anyway, because most of the good players aren't really available or they're hesitant to move. But I just I just got the feeling that there was a disappointment there that the club had sort of hung him out to dry a bit. Um, and that like he was trying to put on the face of the club and all and say, yeah, this player, stuff like that. But he didn't seem. I looked at a lot of his interviews in that sort of January period, and he didn't seem too enthused really about what he was talking to players up slightly, but not to the point of if you have a Joe Gomez or a Virgil van Dijk. But I can understand as well from the club's point of view, you can't just go out and spend another 50, 60, 70 million on two more defenders. Because then what do you do with all these defenders when Virgil does come back, when Joe Gomez does come back? You know what I mean? You can't have 4, 5, 6 world-class centre-halves.
I suppose he's also looking at the other teams around him. Like, he's seen, like, ourselves spending 200 million. He's seen City go out and, spend on defenders like the likes of Ake, the likes of Ruben Diaz. They're going out, they bought Ferran Torres as well. Like, they're even seeing United thinking out, get Cavani, bringing in players like that, getting Bruno Fernandes last year. So I'm sure he's kind of looking at all these other teams going out and buying players, and he's kind of sitting looking, going, well, I've won you the league, I won you the Champions League. Why can't I go out and get these players?
Yeah, well, we kind of did it when you guys couldn't. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We kind of, now having said that, I mean, we sold Coutinho to fund, Van Dijk and Alisson and stuff like that to fix those problems that were there. So again, I would say our net spend was quite low. But again, it's comparing us in terms of spending to a Chelsea or a Man City it's fool's gold really, because those guys, they don't really have anyone to answer to except themselves. Whereas FSG is like, it's this company, it has to, there has to be some sort of financial, sense to what happens. Whereas, Roman or the owners of Man City, they can go out and put 70 million, 80 million on Kai Havertz, and if he doesn't work out, you sell him on and you move to the next one. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And you can accept that. FSG as a company can't make those mistakes, unfortunately. They just can't. So they have to be a little bit more sensitive and prudent in terms of their buying. But I could see this summer if Jurgen sticks around and touch wood, he's going to. You know what I mean? Hopefully he will get the funding he needs to rebuild the team again, and I could see a bunch of players going out that door pretty quickly. And I wouldn't be surprised even if it's one or two of our star players.
Yeah, I mean, they've had that same front three for the past few years, so you do have to freshen it up every so often. In terms of us, though, I'm almost like if someone says Chelsea going to spend 200 million in the summer, our responsibility, no, I don't think we should do that again.
Well, I don't know. I suppose by the time the summer rolls around, Tuchel will have had a look at his team, and he will also be in a similar position where he will say, right, I fancy this guy or I don't fancy this guy, and put them out the door. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously, Giroud will be another year older as well, so you have to kind of think about that. I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea went out and spent another 200 million bringing in a couple of players. That are kind of Tuchel ilk, if you like, and he puts his stamp on it. I mean, if you want to bridge the gap with City, similar to ourselves, and United are in the same boat as well. If you want to bridge that gap with City, you're going to have to go out and spend money. You're going to have to take harsh decisions. At Liverpool, it may be a case where we have to turn around and go, right, we're going to sell a Mo Salah or a Bobby Firmino or a Sadio Mane. We're just going to have to do it in order to fund the rebuild of what we want to do. And that won't sit well with the fans either,
Yeah, but it's similar to us as well. Like, I know we were linked with Erling Haaland. Like, I personally don't think we'll get him. I think Haaland's come out and said he doesn't want to join Chelsea. But the initial rumblings of that were when we were looking at Haaland, we were saying we'd like to bring someone like that in. Tammy Abraham was saying, oh, well, if you bring Erling Haaland in, like, I won't sign a new contract because I don't want to be first choice striker. But I'm looking, going, okay, if, say, we were to get a player like him, he's a 30, 40 goal a season striker compared to Abraham, who is an academy product, but there's no comparison there in terms of the quality. So, again, a harsh decision. If an academy boy comes up and says, I'm not signing the contract because you're going out and sign a star striker, it's like, well, look, we need someone like that to compete.
Yeah, I think the fact that you sorted out your defence so well, and you probably need a little bit of cover there, a little bit better than what you have, let's say.
Yes.
You probably need to shift Kepa out maybe and bring in a backup goalkeeper, a proper backup goalkeeper to Mendy that would challenge him and push him onto another level. But I think it's goals is where it's at. Unless Werner can turn around and start producing goals, I think you will have to go out and look at an Erling Haaland or something like that. And I think, listen, in the conversation of a Timo Werner and an Erling Haaland, Tammy Abraham doesn't even come into that conversation. Tammy Abraham barely even comes into the bench. So, like, I don't know what he's saying. If you're going to go out and sign a top class striker, I'm going to hold off signing the contract. Mate, you're going out the door in the summer. Make no mistake about it. You're no longer a Chelsea player. You better get used to it.
Yeah. Like, he's done his part. He was top goal scorer last season. He's definitely chipped in a few goals, but it's just to be a serious, I think, top four in the title contending team. A striker like Tammy Abraham. Look, I love him. He's a Chelsea boy, but he's just, you can see, if you look at Adoy, if you look at Mount, if you look at Gilmore, if you look at Reece James, like, they're players you look at and go, right, they are top players in the team. If you look at Abraham, in my opinion, I'm like, he's not a top player.
No, he did a job for you last season, in fairness, when you had the ban. And in fairness, he did well under Lampard last season. But, you know, it's like, it's not dissimilar to ourselves. Last season is last season. And I just think, with Chelsea sorting out that defence, if they want to challenge City, and I think Chelsea are going to have a huge season next season. I think they're going to be right in amongst it there. And if they do bring in a top goal scorer, or Werner, you know, turns it around and starts doing what we know he can do, and Havertz steps up as well, I think you're going to be a real force next year. I think you really will push City hard to the title next year. Depending on what we do in the market as well.
Yes. I think that I think in terms of our defence, you talk about like kind of backup and other defenders. I think, to be honest, one of our best answers for a centre back is out on loan in Milan at the moment. Kaya Tomori, he's been playing great out there, and I was a massive fan of him before he got dropped by Lampard. And to be honest, inexplicably dropped by Lampard. I thought he was playing absolutely wonderfully for Chelsea. So, you know, Milan have an option to buy, but I hope that he chooses to stay at Chelsea. I hope Tuchel says to him, look, I want to make you one of my star defenders. I play 3 centre backs. You definitely got a place here. So I think the likes of himself, you know, Thiago Silva might have another year in him as well. But the likes of himself, Rudiger, Christensen, you know, that's not bad. Like, they are not bad together as a three.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we haven't even, spoken much about Zuma either, who was having a reasonable season. You know what I mean? So there is a kind of a core base there. It just depends whether these players want to play or want to sit around and watch. And I suppose that Cesar, I mean, he's coming close to the end now at this stage, isn't he? I mean, he is outstanding still, and he was very good again last night. But you would say, to step up to that Man City level, you know, you just need that little bit more. But yeah, I mean, you know, 6-8 weeks ago when you came on, we were talking about Lampard going and Tuchel coming in, and you know, it was kind of doom and gloom. But we did say that when Tuchel came in, he would, you know, create that German, steely, strong mentality in there that have sort of happened in a real quick. I thought it would take longer, but you know, fair play to him, fair play to Chelsea. Good times are starting to come back again.
Yeah, and I think I remember I made it at the time we were getting Tuchel in. I said, look, I'd be happy with Tuchel, but at the time I said, I don't know how he'll do. I don't know how he'll adapt or how he'll come in or what he'll do with this team. But look, I mean, thankfully I've been proven that he seems to know exactly what he's doing so far anyway.
Yeah, well, I think we looked at it at the time. We said, well, Chelsea couldn't get any worse, could they? I mean, similar to ourselves. I mean,
there was one I saw. There was a story going around last week that initially when Lampard got sacked, I think it was Marina Granovsky wanted to bring Sarri back, and if that happened, I would have been like, look.
Oh, my God. Yeah. There was remember even the talk going around that Adam Grant was going to come back in and help out Lampard, and I was there going, good Lord, Gerard Houllier, Roy Evans, good Lord. What do we need, you know? But listen, brilliant to chat as always and review the game. Well, brilliant for you, not so brilliant for me, but I love the chats anyway. So as always, head over to YouTube, Dynamo Podcast Network, smash subscribe and bell notification on that. Also check out Alex on Facebook with the chats, doing great stuff over there. And until next time, we shall talk to you again. Thank you.